I would like to thank the organizers of the Illuminating Friendship lecture series for the invitation to speak to you all today, as I hope to show you something like friendship is an important part of the human experience across the world. However, we know very little about what friendship means and how it functions in most societies. By raising awareness of the diverse ways that people can be friends, I have high hopes that the lecture series will inspire scholars to explore this crucial human relationship in different cultural settings. I wear two professional hats, one as an anthropologist and one as an epidemiologist. As an anthropologist, I study the diverse ways that humans think, behave, and build societies around the world. As an epidemiologist, I explore the social factors that cause some people to get sick while others remain healthy. Much of my work combines these two fields by examining how humans build institutions and societies in ways that improve health and well-being. And when I was a graduate student, friendship drew my attention for several reasons. First, friendship is an institution that plays an important role in people's health and well-being. Like all institutions, a friendship doesn't always function in the way its participants might wish. Friends often fail each other, spilling important secrets, poaching romantic partners, and disappearing in times of need. They also take a lot of time and effort to cultivate and maintain. Despite these costs and failures, overwhelming evidence suggests that friendships more often than not provide substantial health benefits and encourage partners to help each other in times of need. Another reason friendship drew my attention is that it arises in many diverse cultural settings, allowing us to explore how it varies across changing cultural circumstances. Third, unlike large-scale societal institutions like national health insurance or governmental social safety nets, friendship can involve just two participants as they arrive at norms and expectations which shape how partners treat each other, how they cooperate, and how they help each other in times of need. With just a few direct participants, I thought it would be easier to study the full institution of friendship. And finally, and perhaps most exciting, there are billions of friendships around the world in different societies. The sheer quantity of the instances of this institution permits us to explore the diverse ways people cultivate and maintain friendships, not only between cultures, but also within the same culture. For these reasons, I got excited about using friendship as a model system for examining how humans build institutions in a way that improves health and well-being. As I delved into the literature on friendship, I realized that sociologists, psychologists, and economists had published thousands of studies on how humans build and maintain friendships, how friendships in turn guide how people treat each other on a daily basis, and how friendships shape people's well-being. However, the vast majority of these studies focused on only a thin slice of humanity, college students and highly educated people in urban areas in the US, Europe, Japan, China, and a small set of other countries. I wasn't at all convinced that the findings from this thin slice of humanity could tell us about how friendship works in other places around the world, so I set out on a journey to answer some basic questions about what friendship means and how it works in a wide range of human societies. What does it look like in different cultural settings? Can we find something like friendship everywhere? How do people build and maintain friendships? And what consequences does friendship have for people's health and well-being? These were not novel questions, but I wanted to determine if the answers that had been found from thousands of studies in a handful of countries were valid across a broader range of humanity. This talk has two major sections. First, I will describe what I found by exploring the cross-cultural record in search of friendship. I'll outline what people in different settings have described as crucial aspects of friendship. In other words, what are the characteristics people in diverse societies have used as the measure of friendship? First exploration raises questions about friendship that need systematic methods to compare friendships across different societies. However, exporting the methods and measures that social scientists often use to study friendship raises all sorts of challenges. So in the second part, I describe some of the key challenges in systematically exploring friendship across diverse societies. The first exploration was not as simple as one might expect. Anthropology has traditionally served as the social science that explores the diverse ways that people think, act, interact, and build societies across a wide range of cultures. So I started trying to answer these questions about friendship by looking to the ethnographic record. However, I came up against a pernicious problem that one anthropologist has referred to as anthropology's love affair with kinship, and the related neglect of friendship in describing small-scale societies. Early in the 20th century, anthropologists discovered that it was a straightforward task to collect detailed genealogies of people in small villages and to construct relatively simple tree-like maps, like this one, charting the relationship between every individual in a society. In many societies, such kin relations ostensibly guided behaviors, obligations, and feelings between two individuals. Thus, the concept of kinship gave anthropologists what appeared to be a clear-cut system for analyzing behavior that depended on nothing more than who gave birth to whom, who was married to whom, how old one was, and who was male or female. A prominent anthropologist's description of Tali society in Ghana provides one striking example of the view that kinship, in this case patrilineal ties, provided the underlying skeleton for society. As Myers-Fortis wrote in 1944, the whole of Tali society is built up around the lineage system. It is the skeleton of their social structure, the bony framework which shapes their body politic. It guides their economic life and molds their religious ideas and values. Whether for these or other reasons, documenting the kinship system of a culture became routine in anthropological fieldwork in the 20th century. Meticulous genealogical charts were a key part of an ethnographer's toolkit for describing society. Indeed, in one of the discipline's most influential field manuals, Notes and Queries on Anthropology, 2/3 of the section on social structure is devoted to family, kinship, and lineage, with no mention of extra-kin relationships. This methodological focus certainly reinforced perceptions of kinship's importance in daily life. For example, according to the genealogical method endorsed in Notes and Queries, the ethnographer first identified a list of terms for people related by either genealogical reckoning or marriage, like father, mother, cousin, aunt, father-in-law, and then identified through questioning and observation the traditional behaviors towards each individual. Such a method is very good at discerning how kin relationships affect behavior, but it completely ignores other kinds of relationships that might exist between people. For these reasons, my search for friendship in the ethnographic record often produced spotty results. On occasion, one would find an ethnography where friendship struck an anthropologist's curiosity, leading the ethnographer to give a detailed description of friendships in the society they were studying. For example, among Lepcha farmers in eastern Nepal, special friends or ingzong looked after each other in emergencies, helped with farm work, and promised to care for each other's children in the event of one's death. Special friends who lived far away fulfilled a special purpose, offering a place to stay during expeditions for much-needed goods such as cloth and salt. Lepcha said that the god Komsitong first thought of the institution when he was drunk. He subsequently forged ingzong with all the foreigners who possessed things he did not have himself, with Sikamese for their oxen, Tibetans for rugs, Bhutanese for fine cloth, and Indians for their copper vessels. While ingzong provided clear material benefits, the best ingzong also were described as loving each other. Among women living in the small Cretan mountain village of Hatsi, close friends provided a safe haven for speaking openly, sharing their problems, and disclosing secret affairs. Worries lessened when confiding in friends. Friends made mundane tasks such as baking fun and pleasurable. Most importantly, a woman's friends understood and appreciated her in a male-dominated environment, where how she felt and how she must behave often came into conflict. Anthropologists have often claimed that in male-dominated peasant villages like Hatsi, married women are sequestered in homes, surrounded by kin, and not in a position to make or have friends. However, far more women in Hatsi felt closer to a friend than to their own family members. Juhwansi foragers in Namibia and Botswana cultivate long-term sharo ties based on gift-giving and mutual assistance with partners over vast geographic expanses. Sharo partners regularly exchange gifts, beads, arrows, tools, clothing, as tokens of their affection and as signs that they hold each other in their hearts. These far-reaching networks allow people to live and forage in other areas where food or water in their home territory had disappeared, and when social relations had become strained at home. If they were to infringe on the land of others without such ties, the owners would try to expel them. People draw from Sharo ties when searching for a spouse, and they share meat with Sharo partners when they have a large kill. While Juansi cultivate many Sharo from biological kin, they make equal numbers of Sharo at all levels of relatedness, including non-relatives. These are only a few examples among many, including labor-sharing relationships among farmers and gardeners, stock associates who take care of each other's cattle, and war companions who protect one's downed body during battle. Indeed, ethnographers have described friendship-like relationships on all inhabited continents and among groups at all levels of social complexity. These in-depth descriptions provided important details about the unity and diversity in friendship around the world. However, in many cases, ethnographers made no mention of friendships at all. And in some rare situations, anthropologists even claimed that no concept of friendship existed in a society. Are there societies where there's nothing like friendship? Now, if we turn to fiction, we can find such societies. One example is the Atevi culture in C.J. Cherry's science fiction series Foreigner, which has no concept of love, liking, or friendship. However, a number of observations suggest this state of affairs is very unlikely in the real human world. First, the probability of finding friendship, or not finding it, in common ethnographic data sets, such as the Human Relations and Area Files, or HRAF, depends a great deal simply on how many pages have been written about the culture. This figure shows the proportion of cultures where coders at the Human Relations and Area Files had found a description of friendship. The x-axis divides cultures by how many pages ethnographers had written about them. The 3 lines indicates 3 different samples of varying sizes. The full Human Relations and Area File sample of 496 cultures, a much smaller but more richly documented set of 60 cultures, and the standard cross-cultural sample of about 150 cultures. In all samples, we see that the probability that HRAF coders found a description of friendship depended substantially, simply, on how much had been written about that group. When cultures had at least 2,000 pages of documentation, HRAF coders almost always documented a description of friendship. Whereas if only 500 pages had been written, it's very likely they wouldn't find one. Interestingly, more in-depth investigation of those cultures where friendship was apparently missing almost always revealed relationships with striking similarities to friendship, but that had been described in other terms, such as artificial kin. It is important to note that in 8 of the nearly 500 HRAF cultures, ethnographers explicitly stated that friendship did not exist in such societies. In 3 of these cases, these claims were clearly contradicted by other observers. In the other 5 cultures, there were strong cultural prescriptions against people forming dyadic friendships, as it was believed to lead to factions that could disrupt the overall cohesiveness of the larger society. So in roughly 99% of cultures documented in the HRAF, we can find descriptions of relationships like friendship, and in 1% that deserve further attention, it appears they may be strongly discouraged as disruptive institutions. Although something like friendship appears to be nearly universal across documented human societies, does it look the same in every place? Scholars in the US and Europe have outlined numerous characteristics that define friendship, and a review of the many papers written on friendship reveal the following set of characteristics. According to these accounts, friends disclose personal information to each other, they give gifts, and they help each other especially in times of need. Friendships are entered and exited voluntarily, and they are private in the sense that friends have sole discretion on how they behave within the friendship. Friends should be equals. They should have positive emotional responses to each other, but at times they may provoke jealousy. One can behave informally with friends, and one should interact frequently with friends. But do all these qualities characterize friendship across diverse societies worldwide? To answer this question, I focused on 60 societies that past researchers have chosen for two reasons. They are very well documented, and they represent groups from all regions of the world. We can argue with the specific cultures that are included. I, for one, would like to have seen more representation from the Middle East and Central Asia. Also, it's odd that South Asia constitutes nearly half of all documented cultural groups in the world, but this sample only has 4 South Asian cultures in it. Despite these quibbles, the sample provides a good starting point for examining what qualities characterize friendships in well-documented diverse societies. When examining descriptions of friendship from these 60 societies, a few observations stand out. By far the most commonly mentioned characteristic were that friends help each other, no surprise, and that they feel positive emotions towards each other, also not a surprise. More than half of descriptions also mention that friends often exchange gifts, and that need is a major criterion for helping rather than tit-for-tat kinds of reciprocity. Interestingly, the 5th most commonly cited property is one not mentioned in that earlier laundry list. Descriptions in more than a third of the sample cultures indicated that friendship was cemented through a commitment ritual, something like a wedding. Importantly, some of the qualities from this laundry list were not only rarely mentioned, but they were often described as not being a characteristic of friendship. Examples included frequent socializing, disclosing personal secrets, equality, voluntariness, and privateness. Social science discussions of friendship frequently mention self-disclosure as a key element of the relationship. Indeed, some social science surveys have operationalized close friends in terms of self-disclosure, asking people who they regularly discuss intimate matters with. While descriptions of friendship in diverse societies sometimes mention self-disclosure as a key activity among friends, other accounts emphasize other kinds of helping, such as economic aid or help in daily tasks. Still others specifically point out how friends actively avoid self-disclosure. For example, in her study of farmers in central France, Deborah Reed Donaghy describes how individuals avoid disclosing personal information to friends, even close friends, as such sensitive information might be deployed in the case of inter-family disputes. In western Congo-Brazzaville, Kuni cultivators avoid disclosing too much to friends because such disclosure may lead one to lose power and become more vulnerable to witchcraft. So in many societies, self-disclosure may not be an essential part of friendship, and in some cases even avoided for the problems it can cause. Another frequently cited characteristic of friendship is that friendship is voluntary. However, there are many examples in the cross-cultural record where individuals' choices in beginning and ending friendships are highly limited. There are many factors that can limit people's choices. Outside parties such as families can play a role in arranging or permitting or forbidding friendships. Families can pass friendships through family lines for many generations. Partners can face serious public or supernatural sanctions by ending their friendship. For example, in Cameroon, among pre-colonial Bangwa farmers, friends, as well as a future spouse, were assigned to a baby at birth. And among Iroquois farmers in the US and Canada, a healer could assign a gravely ill person to a new friend as part of the healing process. Meanwhile, blood brotherhood, a common form of friendship in some societies, could be as binding as marriage, requiring elaborate ceremonies to annul the union and to avoid the supernatural sanctions that might result from the break. These are just a few examples of the ways that friends can be less than voluntary in many cultural settings. Notably, one aspect of friendship that is missing from current academic accounts, commitment rituals, showed up in more than a third of the sample cultures. Consider the Kasende ceremony practiced among 19th century Lunda farmers in Zambia. 2 men became blood brothers and were expected to assist each other when needed. In the presence of friends and family members, the 2 men in the ceremony sat opposite each other, holding hands, each with a vessel of beer by his side. They made cuts on their clasped hands, stomachs, right cheeks, and foreheads, and picked up blood from each of these cuts with a blade of grass. Each man washed the blood-soaked grass in his own beer vessel. Then the partners exchanged vessels and drank the other's beer. While the men drank, their friends beat on the ground with clubs and cried out, ratifying the friendship. The friends of the two men then drank some of the beer. To end the ceremony, the men exchanged gifts, generally drawn from their most precious possessions. Although the details of such ceremonies vary from culture to culture, the formal and elaborate cementing of a close friendship before an audience, and sometimes with signed contracts, is documented in hundreds of cultures around the world, including many European societies in past centuries. In numerous cases, the ritual marks the culmination of many years of friendship between two people who now want to take the next step and declare publicly that they will support each other for the rest of their lives. In other cases, the ritual brings together two relative strangers who are expected to grow, to love, and support each other in the relationship over the long term. In other instances, the ritual is part of a much longer multi-generational process where adults pass on their formal friendships to their respective children. Indeed, it appears that modern United States and Europe may be outliers in this respect, since for the vast majority of Westerners there are no formal rituals to show commitment to a friend or friendship. When systematically examining descriptions of friendship in a diverse sample of well-documented cultures, we find that only some of the characteristics of friendship outlined by past scholars arise frequently across cultures. Notably, existing theoretical and empirical work suggest that these features are functionally related. First and foremost, friends help each other in times of need. Positive feelings towards each other play a key role in motivating such help, and regular gifts provide a signal or reminder to one's partner of those positive feelings of goodwill. In a substantial number of societies, commitment rituals also play a role in publicly cementing these ties and bringing broader society into regulating these relationships. Importantly, what help is provided between friends can vary based on the needs in society. In some societies, economic help and loans appear to be more important. In other societies, discussing personal matters and sharing important secrets appear to be more important. But what matters is that friends will try to help when needed, regardless of the type of help. Psychological and social mechanisms, such as feelings of goodwill, gift-giving, and commitment ceremonies also seem to play a role in encouraging such help. So to sum up the key findings from this cross-cultural exploration, first, something like friendship arises in the vast majority of human cultures worldwide. Second, of the many proposed characteristics of friendship, such as voluntariness, self-disclosure, equality, and frequent socialization, only a few are commonly mentioned in descriptions of friendship across cultures. Specifically, friends help each other in times of need, positive feelings towards each other play a role in motivating such help, and regular gifts provide a signal or reminder to one's partner of those positive feelings of goodwill. Finally, a review of the cross-cultural record reveals aspects of friendship, such as commitment rituals, that are largely absent from discussions of friendship in the social and behavioral sciences. Commitment rituals in particular deserve more attention for their role in cultivating and maintaining friendships. This initial survey of the cross-cultural record confirmed that something like friendship arises in the vast majority of documented human cultures worldwide. It also revealed elements of friendship that arise commonly across a wide range of cultures, as well as ways that friends differ across cultures. This provides a useful starting point for understanding friendship as a human, and not just American or British relationship. However, this is only a starting point. For example, over the past few decades, research in the social and behavioral sciences has generated many findings about how friends think, feel, and behave toward each other in the US, Europe, and a handful of other countries. These findings include that women may have more close friends than men, that emotional closeness is an important mediator of helping among friends, that loyalty to friends depends on the presence of other institutions in society that can meet basic needs, and the frequency of interaction and self-disclosure can be an important predictor of friendship and emotional closeness. A natural question is, how well do these findings also hold in the full range of human cultures? As we showed already, many of the characteristics of friendship in the academic literature, such as self-disclosure and voluntariness, do not appear to be essential aspects of friendship in other cultures. Thus, we might suspect that some of the current findings about friendship may not generalize to cultures worldwide. One consistent finding is called the kinship premium. In numerous studies, researchers have found that people are more likely to help and share with people with whom they feel more emotionally close. However, at the same level of emotional closeness, if we compare genetic kin and non-genetic kin at the same level of closeness, people help and share more with the genetic kin. Thus, at the same level of emotional closeness, we give our genetic kin a premium. This figure illustrates this effect looking at how much people are willing to give up so that a partner can have $75. The x-axis captures how close someone feels to the partner, with the left being the closest friends, families, and romantic partners, and the right representing strangers. This figure shows that people are willing to give up $75 or sometimes even more so that very close partners on the left can have $75. By contrast, people are willing to give up on average only about $10 to let a stranger have $75. Notably, this figure also shows that at the same level of closeness, people are willing to give up $10 to $15 more for genetic kin compared to non-kin at the same level of emotional closeness. Notably, a similar premium also seems to apply to romantic partners. For example, the study on the right showed that when deciding to share with a partner at the same level of emotional closeness, people on average are willing to give up $8 more for the romantic partner than they would just for friends. Notably, there is no friendship premium, indicating emotional closeness is a sufficient proxy for the feelings that guide our willingness to share with friends. In other words, all of the effect of friendship on sacrifice in these experiments is mediated through emotional closeness, where it isn't for genetic kin and romantic partners. Scholars have proposed evolutionary arguments for these kinship and mate premiums, but it would be good to know that these premiums are truly generalizable before building theoretical arguments about them. If we want to assess whether these observed premiums for kin and mates generalize to other cultural settings, we need to do more than simply reviewing what anthropologists have reported in the ethnographic record. Such accounts rely on ethnographic descriptions that usually present an idealized and normative view of friendship. For this reason, they don't permit examining variations in friendships within cultures. For this, we need to develop measures of friendship that are meaningful and comparable across a broad range of cultural backgrounds. This includes deciding what relationships count as friendships in each cultural setting, and also measuring concepts such as emotional closeness in a way that is meaningful in context but also comparable across those contexts. The first challenge is simply identifying cases of friendship in different cultures. Even asking people who their friends are requires careful attention to local linguistic and cultural norms. At the most basic level, in each society, there can be numerous terms that have a family resemblance to the concept of friend. For example, in English, we have friend, close friend, buddy, and pal, each with unique gradations of meaning related to the concept of friend. Interviews in a specific setting might ultimately reveal that buddy, friend, and pal might be too casual, and close friend is the best way to capture a person's inner circle of supportive relationships. But even when we decide on the best term, each culture has unique rules about what we can call and cannot call a close friend. For example, in one study of social networks in the 1980s, 60% of U.S. respondents listed their spouse as a best friend, whereas nearly none did in Mexico City. The spouses in Mexico City may have had very similar relationships as the spouses in the United States, but cultural rules about who one calls a friend led people to label them differently. In the same study, one informant wanted to list an alter as a friend, but did not because they were both in the military, and the friend had a higher rank than the informant. In this case, culturally specific notions that friends should be equal prevented the respondent from listing a partner as a friend when they otherwise would have. In some societies, there are cultural rules against referring to genetic kin or in-laws as friends, even though one might have a relationship with that person that is very much like friendship. In other societies, it is completely appropriate to refer to genetic kin and in-laws as friends. For these reasons, simply asking people who are their friends or close friends may leave out relationships in one society that one might capture in a different society with different rules. Finally, The different terms used in different societies for close friend might also have subtle gradations and sometimes substantial gradations in meaning. Consider the word close friend in English and drug in Russian. A number of commentators have discussed how drug relationships in Russian are even more exclusive and stronger than close friend relationships in English. How then can we compare friendships across cultures when local categories can be so different in terms of what they include and what they exclude? One approach to dealing with this issue is to supplement these categorical assessments of friendship with finer-grained measures of relationship quality that are characteristics of friendship. Social and behavioral scientists have developed dozens of measures of friendship quality. Many of these measures assess qualities such as self-disclosure and time spent together, which may not actually be common qualities for friendship in diverse cultural settings. However, one set of measures that appear to reflect a common aspect of friendship focus on the feelings partners have about each other. These are variously framed using metaphors such as closeness, we-ness, oneness, or merging of oneself with one's friend. Here are two examples. The first task involves imagining oneself and another as abstract circles on a sheet of paper, and the overlap between these circles as a measure of nearness or closeness to that person, and then choosing the best of 7 sets of overlapping circles that best represent the overlap in one's relationship. The second involves choosing a number from 1 to 10, indicating how close one feels with one's partner. These seem like straightforward tasks. In 2010, I took these measures of closeness to rural Bangladesh for a study of cooperative relationships, where among other things I was interested in examining the kinship premium. It turns out they were not at all straightforward. Here I'll describe the long process of developing measures that captured something like relational closeness in rural Bangladesh. To give some background on Bangladesh, it is one of the most densely populated countries in the world, more than quadrupling the population density in the United Kingdom. More than 90% of the population identify as Bengali, speaking Bangla, and 90% are Muslim, with much of the remaining 10% identifying as Hindu. Rural areas rely heavily on agriculture, especially rice, jute, and fruits. In northwest Bangladesh, rural residents often live in nucleated settlements of about 100 to 500 people, separated by rice fields, bamboo stands, ponds, and fruit orchards. The following observations are from 4 rural villages, 2 primarily Muslim and 2 primarily Hindu, in rural northwest Bangladesh. I also need to note that the work I'm describing involves a team of Bangladeshi colleagues who I've been working with for over 15 years and are actively involved in all aspects of fieldwork, including method development, brainstorming, data collection, analysis, and interpretation. Before we began asking Bangladeshi villagers about relationship qualities, such as who they felt close to, it was necessary to find out how they talked about social relationships and what linguistic devices they used to characterize differences in the quality of their relationships. Observations and interviews in the communities revealed several local relationship categories akin to friendship. These included 2 kinds of informal friendships, Ganishta Bandhu, which is roughly thick friend, and Utabosha, which literally means up, down, sit, and indicates a visiting friendship characterized by frequent visits to each other's households for tea, meals, and gossip. Villagers emphasized that helping in times of need was a defining obligation of these friendships. In open-ended interviews, respondents often used an adjective, gonishto, to characterize the quality of their relationships with relatives and friends. Derived from the root gon, meaning variously thick, solid, or dense, Ganishta describes relationships that are intimate, close, or familiar. In interviews, respondents mentioned that Ganishta friends and relatives felt comfortable around each other, enjoyed visiting each other, helped each other with chores, loans, and advice, and trusted each other enough to talk freely or open their minds to each other about important, sensitive, and secretive matters. The factors described as making friends feel less close included envy, regular failures to help when needed, conflicts over lending and borrowing, fights between one's children, and disputes over farmland, livestock, and situations where one's cattle ate one's crops. Another potential source of conflict was worry that an envious friend had used supernatural tools, amulets, and spells to cause injury or illness. In addition to gunishta, respondents sometimes used a spatial metaphor of nearness, kache, and an ordinal measure of firstness, prio, but not with the same frequency as gunishta. Confident that we had identified a term, gunishta, that is analogous to emotional closeness in this context, our team then moved forward with trying to develop a measure of closeness. When we develop a measure, it usually involves numerous rounds of piloting where we try things out with respondents. In addition to proactive questions such as, does this make sense? What are we asking you to do? We observe respondents' reactions to new measures. Some of these spontaneous responses include saying bujna, or I don't understand. The respondent might laugh out loud, or hesitate, or ask questions like, what am I supposed to do? We started our piloting with the 7-point sets of overlapping circles I described earlier. In earlier piloting, the method caused serious confusion and hesitation among participants. Indeed, we went through 5 modifications over several years while attempting to make the task more concrete and to encourage fluid responding. This involved changing the overlapping circles, the abstract circles, to overlapping stick figures, changing the orientation of the 7 items from left to right to top to bottom to encourage thinking about quantities in terms of up and down, reducing the number of items from 7 to 5, and having respondents place photographs of other villagers in baskets in a line from left to right, each corresponding to a different level of gunishta. Each of these solutions created its own problems and confusions, and even when respondents said they understood the task, they often took a very long time to make decisions about each partner. Breakthrough came with a simple spatial reconfiguration. One of our team members proposed arranging the baskets in a line in front of the respondent, with each successive basket a bit farther away to represent different levels of proximity. Arranging the baskets in terms of distance from the ego apparently fixed the problems experienced with all the other earlier versions. With this new version, respondents usually expressed little difficulty, responded fluently, and were able to classify the entire adult population of the village, usually about 100 people in each village, in 5 to 10 minutes. With these tools in hand, we could efficiently elicit judgments of emotional closeness, gunishta, that captured key aspects of local usage. Most respondents placed their spouses, their closest genetic relatives, and their closest friends in the closest bin, so it worked that way. In contrast, when we asked people about people outside the community who they did not know, respondents nearly always placed them in the farthest bin. The measure of closeness also showed strong independent associations with helping in the previous year, and most importantly, this approach to asking about closeness, when we translate it to other places, also worked well when we used it with U.S. students and rural Indonesian respondents. The process of identifying an acceptable way to ask about closeness took about 3 years, but since then we have been able to use it in a number of studies of the role that emotional closeness and friendship play in helping and sharing, not only in these communities but also with populations in Indonesia and the US. More importantly, it shows that it is possible to come up with locally meaningful and globally comparable measures of friendship. However, it requires extended local conversations and piloting of measures to understand the best and most appropriate ways to ask. So to sum up some key takeaways from today's lecture, first and foremost, friendship is ubiquitous across human cultures. But while it may be ubiquitous, only a few of the characteristics proposed by past scholars hold across human societies. Those characteristics that do hold worldwide appear to work together to encourage help in times of need. These include feelings of emotional closeness towards partners, and also frequent gift giving to signal those feelings of closeness. Studying and comparing friendship and emotional closeness across diverse societies is necessary if we want a full picture of human friendship and not just American or British friendship. Doing this is possible, but it requires hard work. And I'd like to end by thanking my collaborators in Bangladesh for the many years of productive work we've done together, for members of the lab at Arizona State University, and also for the organizers of this lecture series for inviting me to come talk to you. I look forward to hearing your questions.